our second question here, and it is about the Blazers defense. That, you know, at least for me personally, this was something that I didn't see coming. The Blazers ranked third in defense. They gave up 94 to the Magic, a team that's averaging 109 points a game. That's pretty impressive. So the question is the Blazers defense for real, Nate?
I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to go a hard yes on that. I mean, when you look at them statistically right now, this is where they're at. They're third in defensive rating. They're fifth in rebounding, third in opponent's point per game, third in opponent rebounds allowed, sixth in opponent field goal percentage, third in opponent three-point field goal percentage, first in opponent assists, seventh in opponent fast break points, and 10th in opponent's points in the paint. They're defending everywhere right now. There's not one spot where you can point out that's where they struggled defensively. Overall, they're a good team, but in this part of the defense, they don't play as well. They're great all around right now, and it's not just 14 games this year. It goes back to the 20 games when they had Jusuf Nurkic last year. So now, when you put that together, that's 34 games where the Blazers have been now a top 10 defense. That's nearly half a season. If we were 34 games into the season and the Blazers were a top 10 defense, it'd be a no-duh. Yeah, they're a great defense this year.
That's
but
a great point.
Some people, are a little hesitant because it's only 14 games, but if you go back to the 20 last year, after they acquired Nurkic when they were a great defense, they've continued, and they've actually gotten better this year after an offseason of working on it. The communication is there. The effort is there. Even in games where we see lapses for a quarter, like last night against Orlando, they typically bounce back and play well the rest of the game. And so I think this is a team that's committed. They're active. They're contesting shots, and they're great protecting the rim and grabbing rebounds. So, yeah, I think this is definitely a for-real defense.
I don't see how you can argue that. I mean, they're ranked third right now, and I don't know if they're the third best defense in the NBA. Maybe that's a little bit too high, but I think that they absolutely have both the personnel and the drive to finish the season ranked in the top 10 in defense. I think they're that good. I think that I was looking at last season when the Blazers were ranked 21st in defense. At this time last year, they were ranked dead last, and it wasn't even close. And what you had last year was you had a lot of players on the roster who played major minutes who were defensive liabilities. Damian Lillard was not a good defender. Neither was C.J. McCollum. Allen Crabbe was one of the, by some metrics, the worst defensive shooting guard in the NBA. Mason Plumlee, same thing, one of the worst defensive centers in the NBA. What you've done this season is you've replaced Mason Plumlee with Jusuf Nurkic, who ranks fourth in defensive rating among starting centers. Damian and CJ are both playing the best defense of their careers, and it doesn't look like they plan on stopping anytime soon. You see the effort, you see improved technique, and then the other defensive liability from last season, Allen Crabbe, is also gone. And so there are no weak links on this roster right now in the rotation. Every single player who's playing is playing great defense. I was looking at I wrote up a story yesterday about the Blazers defense and what has gone into making them a better defense this year, and I looked up the ranks and defensive rating for every player who's in the rotation for the Blazers and how they rank among starting players at their position. Damian ranks 5th in the NBA among starting point guards in defense. CJ ranks 7th among shooting guards. Harkless ranks 10th among small forwards. Nurk is, like we talked about, 4th among centers. Noah Vonleh and Al-Farouq Aminu, I set the baseline at 10 games started, and neither of them have started that many games, but they both rank 1st and 2nd among power forwards in defense. If Davis was a starter, he'd rank 8th. Evan Turner would rank 2nd among shooting guards and 3rd among small forwards, and Shabazz Napier, like you talked about, would rank 2nd among point guards. Everyone's playing defense. Everyone's bought in, and it's hard to see that just turning around and then becoming the defensive team they were a couple of years ago. I think it's for real.
They've earned what they have, just like Shabazz Napier. This has been the focus. Defense has been definitely something that they've made a focal point this year, and the proof's in the pudding with the numbers there. But unlike what you said, Nate, I have to disagree. I'm not going to compare what they did last year to this year. I need to see a bigger sample size before I go all in on this defense. But right now, there's no doubt they're killing it. And everyone that has gone in front of them, they've done a good job of holding teams under 100 points for the most part. And where we were last year talking about this, man, I mean, to see this huge jump is just incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, they were terrible. And at this point last year, they were one of the worst. And before last night's game against the Magic, had a chance to talk to Coach Terry Stotts about that and said, hey, well, what's been the difference between last year at this time and where they're at now? And he even took it a step further, giving a shout-out to one of his star players.
I think we're pretty focused. I think, it's been a goal, but we've talked about being more focused and having more effort at the defensive end, and I think we've just shored up areas in a lot of different areas, not just one thing. I think we contest shots a little bit better. I think we get back in transition better. I think we rebound better. I think it's across the board. I think individual defense is better. I will say, for as much criticism that Damian's gotten for his first 5 years, I think it should be noted how well he's playing this year. I think people are quick to hop on his lack of defense. They should be just as quick to jump on his good defense.
So that's one of the biggest surprises was seeing your individual numbers for me, and to see Damian Lillard 5th for his position.
Yeah.
I mean, that took me a minute when we were talking about this. So I love this topic just because of the reputation that this team had, and they're changing that with every game. But I just think that I need to see a few more games before I go all in on what this
Can I
defense
ask
does.
you why you don't look at those 20 games last year with Nurkic as part of this equation?
I saw what they were able to do last year, but things change over the summer. Things change from a week or a month, much less from the off season to now. And so I just want to see this collectively in a season. That's pretty much all it is. Even though they were able to do that, I just think that the game changes, even though most of the pieces are still the same. And then you got rid of a lot of bad ones, like you mentioned, with Plumlee and Crabbe defensively. Yeah. But I have to see it within the season for me to count it that way, even though they're building that chemistry.
Well, and one thing with the Blazers this year is they need the defense to be this good.
Last
year the defense didn't have to be as good as it's been this year, but they've struggled offensively so far this year. They're 17th in terms of points per game this year, and they're about the same in offensive rating. So they're not a top 10 offense like we're used to seeing.
They've jumped around in that mediocre range for most of
It's been a little while now, I mean, they started off in the top 10, but it's been probably the past 3 weeks they've been in the teens.
So they need this defense to be a top 10 defense in order to win games. I mean, think how
they're relying on it.
Like right now, they've had the 5th easiest schedule in the NBA, and they're 8-6.
Right.
Think about how bad it could be if this defense was a bottom 10 defense, like we've been accustomed to seeing.
If they had that defense from last year.
Yeah, they would like. People think 8-6 they've underperformed so far. It would be much worse than 8-6 right now if the defense hasn't been as stable as it's been.
Think about last night's game. They started out, they gave up 33 points in the first quarter, and then they turned the defense around and started playing the kind of defense we've seen them, the rest of the season. If they weren't a good defensive team this year, they lose that game easily last night. Yeah. They don't recover from that kind of a first quarter performance. So, you're right. Their offense hasn't been good so far. Maybe they'll get that back on track. I don't know.
Yeah. I want to see. I want to see that defense against some better teams in the West too.
That's a good point, and that's a valid caveat because they have not played a lot of the best offensive teams. They played the Raptors, who are 3rd, and a couple other teams in the top 10, but they played a lot of teams in the bottom half of the league offensively.
So this is going to be a fun topic, I think, to keep an eye on when we hit the 35 game mark, and maybe the 50.
Yeah.
And see how bad they've gone down, or if they've sustained
the
that.
course.
Yeah. But there's no doubt that defense is carrying the team at this point, which is crazy to say right now.